definitely we're going to start talking a lot about business plans and all sorts of stuff like that here soon. But before we get into that, I've had a lot of people asking questions about scripts, and so agents that are joining me here, partners of mine, and just in general, I've been seeing a lot of people that are looking for different types of scripts. And so what we're going to be talking about today are 5 scripts that I think every agent needs to have in their arsenal. It doesn't need to be like you're going to be an expert on all 5 of these, but like depending on what type of lead generation that you're doing, you're going to want to know these 5 different scripts for those methods. And so I've kind of broken it up. These are the most common ways that I see people doing calls, or the ways that most people should be doing calls, in my opinion, the most effective ways. And so I've gotten a script for each one of those 5 ways that I think is kind of the best script for that particular lead generation method. So that's what we're going to be covering here today. But before we dive right in, I want to see who's tuning in. Do me a favor and throw me some comments. Let me know who's on the stream, and I will be seeing. I see somebody. It's just saying Facebook user, doesn't show me who it is. Hoping to see me at EXPCon. I actually will be there, but I don't get in until tomorrow morning. So I'll be there tomorrow through Saturday. Oh, there we go. What's up, Megan? I will see you tomorrow. So it's going to take me, I'm getting up early tomorrow at 4:30. I got to be at the airport to fly out there nonstop. So to Vegas. So it'll be a crazy week, but I'm excited about it. But I definitely didn't want to miss the opportunity to jump on my live stream with you guys and just talk about some scripts before I head out. And so awesome. We got Tina tuning in from upstate New York. Awesome. Good to see you, Tina. I was just in upstate New York a few months ago with my family. We loved it. We went to the, I'm sure I'm gonna butcher this or pronounce this wrong, but the Ozable Chasm or Chasm. I can't even pronounce it right, but it was amazing. We did like some rock climbing stuff out there, and just absolutely loved it. Upstate New York was just beautiful. We had just gone to a wedding in New Hampshire and drove over to upstate New York. So, all right, who else we have on here? All right, Carol. Good to have you there. Good to see you. Let's see. Tom Binder from Santa Monica. Nice. Glad to have you on the show. Let's see. Erica from Las Vegas. Nice. I'll be there tomorrow. Vanessa, San Antonio, Texas. There we go. All right. Here we go. Yeah, Tina says the leaves are beautiful now. I know, we just missed it. We went a little too early, but we were told we've got to come back when the leaves start changing colors. So I bet it's completely different. Pretty amazing. But awesome. We got Corey saying good morning. Good morning to you. Cynthia, Long Beach, California. Awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, guys, we are going ahead and get started into our first script that I want to talk about. And I'm going to run through these almost just kind of like reading, how I would, kind of read them, or, how I would kind of internalize them. But I'm also going to kind of try and explain the reasoning for why things are said a certain way. And so before I do all of that, though, I kind of, want to just talk about scripts in general and how I view them is, I do believe that you gotta make scripts your own. But I think that they're a good starting place for agents. At the same time, though, too, I don't think that if you completely change them, then it's almost like you're losing some of the benefit. That's why I want to explain why these scripts are the way that they are. So that way, even if you change them a little bit, they still kind of work the way they should. Because, I do believe that scripts are effective. They're, a lot of times they're practiced. They are kind of where it's like they compete against each other. Like, I know for me, like I would try saying things a certain way, and then I would change it up a little bit, and I would see, is this effective? Is this not? And so, you might think like, oh, I can just change this, willy-nilly. But in actuality, if you change it too much, if it goes way farther from where it originally started at, then you may lose the effectiveness of it. And so you got to experiment with it. But that being said, I also don't believe that you should just be like completely, just like reading straight off of a script and where it doesn't sound like you, and you haven't at least changed a few of the things around. So, all right, so let's go ahead and dive right in here. The first script that some of you may know about, and if you have, let me know in the comments. Have you heard of LP Mama? This is a big one. I love this script, and I call it a script, but it's not like so much like a set in stone script where you're saying the same thing every time. It's almost just like a format for a script. So it's going to give you the goal or the outcome that you want to achieve, and breaking down kind of what you hope to get off that call into sections. So even if you do get derailed or off topic a little bit, you can kind of like get back onto your script. And these are really effective, not only for building rapport, which is really important in your script practice and just when you're calling in general, is building rapport with people, but then also getting information that you're going to need to help turn that person who may just be a lead into a client. Okay, so what LP Mama stands for, there's actually 6 words in this script here. And the first one is going to be location. So before I get into kind of the specifics of it, let me tell you too why you would use this script first. So LP Mama is mostly going to be used for like online buyer leads, right? So if you're generating buyer leads off of Facebook, Craigslist, Google pay-per-click, Zillow, any of these types of places where they're typically going to be buyer leads, this is where you're going to want to use this script. Okay, so this isn't for like cold calling sellers or expireds or even geo farming or anything like that. This is strictly for if you're buyer lead generating and you get a lead that comes in that you've got to call right away. This is kind of the process you want to go through with them. So the first thing you're going to do is you want to figure out location. And the reason why this is the starting point is usually, especially if you don't have any kind of rapport set up yet with the potential lead, you're going to want to talk about location because that's going to be the thing they're probably a little more comfortable with discussing with somebody random over the phone right away. It's not like you're asking them any personal information. You're just kind of like talking to them about houses, which is a little bit, less intimidating for people, especially if they're in the market to move, right? And so there's some questions that you can specifically ask for. And just by the way, a few of these, the first 3 scripts are going to be on my blog. So if you want to like go back and, check these out later, you can definitely go on my blog, just search LP Mama for this one and it'll pull up. But I'll keep kind of going here. So the first thing you're going to want to do is location. So you're going to ask some questions like, the address of the home you called in on is located in certain area, right? Like a neighborhood or in a certain zip code, just whatever you think most people are familiar with hearing that said. Is that the only area you're looking to buy in, right? So like this is something like if they called in, or if you said like, hey, I noticed on my website you were looking at properties in this area. Is this the only area you're interested in? And one of the things you'll notice there too is that it's an open-ended question, right? Like, so well, I guess technically it's not open-ended because they could just say yes or no. But usually if you're going to ask them that, that's going to lend them to saying like, well, we're actually, open to a few different areas. Or they might say like, no, yeah, I'm just looking in this neighborhood, right? And you're going to get good information. And it's a pretty easy question to ask. And then now this is where you're going to get into some of the open-ended questions. What have you liked about the homes you've lived in? Again, this is a question that some people, they're going to just be open to asking. Now, that's not going to be the way that you open the call, of course. I mean, you're going to need some kind of like an opening thing, like, how why you're reaching out to them. So it may be like, hey, you were visiting my website. Hey, I noticed you were on Zillow, whatever it is. So have a little transition, but then pretty quickly just try and get into this, because if you try and get too fancy with it, or like, if you do start doing other things, you give them the option to be like, well, I'm too busy or whatever. Whereas if you go straight into the location part of it, you have a better chance that they're going to start talking a little bit. And if you can get them to start talking and opening up, then you're going to get further down the LP Mama script. You'll get more questions asked. And so But yeah, are you familiar with this area? That's another good one. You'll find out like, are they in the area already? Are they moving here from somewhere else? Um, yeah, and so some of these, of course, are going to be neighborhood specific, and then some of them are kind of like house specific with what they're looking for, right? But then you're going to go from location into price, right? And so you don't want to talk about cost or price. You want to start using words like invest or what's your budget, right? So like even though the word is price, like that's just kind of to remind you that the next thing that you're going to talk about in the script after location is going to be price. And so price, obviously, that is a little bit more, intrusive. Somebody needs to be a little bit more open to you before they're going to be willing to talk about things like price or their budget. So hopefully you've built a little rapport already at this point in time when you were asking them questions about location and potentially like the home that they're looking for, that type of thing. But now you're going to get into price. And again, try not to use the word cost or price, but use more words like invest and budget. All right. So, what you might do here, a couple questions are what budget are you most comfortable with? Right? What's the budget for your new home? How much are you looking to invest in your new home? Do you have a monthly payment you're looking to stay under? Right. So those would be some words or questions that you can ask just to start getting them opening up about what's feasible to start to show them, right? Now, this is an important one. The next one on LP Mama is motivation. We've got to find out why they want to, move and finding out what their motivation is. And what you'll find a lot of times, especially like here, we'll get down into these questions here, is that their motivation isn't always going to be said the first time they answer the question. So if you ask them one of these motivation questions, you might have to like try and dig deeper, right? Like ask them, well, why is that? And it might seem a little out of your character to kind of be, prying into people's business. But as a real estate agent, you really do want to find out their motivation. Number one, that's going to really separate you from other agents who don't do that. And yes, it might seem intrusive at first, but once they do open up, if they open up, they'll definitely build a bond and a connection with you better. And then you can better serve them because you really do know what they're looking for. And so when we talk about motivation, some of the questions that you can ask are, what has you looking at new homes today, right? So that's going to start, well, we're in a house now, but, it's gotten a little bit too small, or, hey, we're just renting right now and we're looking to buy, or we're moving into the area. So you're trying to find out what their motivation is. But then even if they say something like that, again, you still might want to go a little bit deeper, because it's like, okay, like, well, why is that? Why are you moving into the area? Why is your home too small now? Like, so you're going to go a little bit deeper and find out the why behind the why, right? And keep going as much as you can that you feel comfortable with and you can tell they still feel comfortable with. All right. Yeah. Do you currently own or rent? How long have you been searching for homes? Have you seen any homes that you like? If so, what kept you from buying it? Are you looking to move in the next 3 to 6 months? Okay, so these are kind of some motivation type of questions. You're trying to figure out how quickly and how hard they're looking for a new home. All right, so then we get down. So now we've done location, price, motivation. Now we're going to get to the first A in LP Mama, which is agent. Right. So now this is where we got to find out, are they working with another agent? And the reason why this is here, it's not the very first thing you ask them, because if you ask them if they're working with an agent right out the gates, if you've not built any rapport or anything, a lot of times people will have their guard up and they'll just say they are, even if they're not, right? Or maybe they know of an agent, but they're probably not going to work with them. But if you just ask this first, then they're going to be like, oh yeah, I've got this agent or whatever. Whereas if you've had a chance to build some rapport, and you can get some of these questions asked and answered, then by the time you ask this, it'll really kind of get them thinking. And and if they do, and if they've been working with an agent, they're going to tell you, and at that point you'll know what you have to do. But they also, if they're unsure or whatever, they'll kind of tell you the story, right? Like, well, we have so and so, but we're not sure if we're going to use them yet, whatever, right? So this is where, again, you're going to ask a couple questions. You don't have to ask too many, but just ask a question to try and figure it out. So you could see here, yeah, is an agent helping you? Did you already sign a contract with them? It is important to ask if they've signed a contract, because a lot of times, if they're just working with an agent, but they're not under a buyer's representation agreement, you don't know the extent of that. And it is still fair game for you to work with that potential client. So you want to make sure to see if they've signed a exclusive buyer contract with that person. In questions even like this, like if you're afraid to ask that right off the bat, you could say, how many homes have you seen the inside of? Because realistically, most of the time people aren't going to see the inside of homes unless they have an agent. And if they do, if they're like, oh, we've seen, probably 4 or 5 homes, you can say, oh, great. Were they open houses or did you go with an agent? Right? Like just follow it up like that. Yep. Do you have a 100% commitment to this agent, or are you open to looking for the best deal? Right. Um, and then, yeah, should I send any deals to that agent or directly to you? Right. So this, again, you're just kind of finding out if you want to find an opening to see, like, are they really under an agreement with somebody, or not? All right. So once we've kind of nailed down and figured out where they're at as far as an agent goes, we're going to jump into mortgage questions, right? Figuring out how far along in the process is this person, and then also how qualified is this person potentially. And so from there, you're going to ask them things like, how do you plan on paying for your home? How much do you have on hand to make for a down payment? And has anybody talked to you as far as your options go? Do you know the differences between conventional or FHA financing? Just trying to get into these options with them. So that way you can kind of see, like, if somebody's just kind of getting started, or if they're like, oh yeah, I know we've already got a, pre-approval from our bank or from, Rocket Mortgage or whatever, right? Like you'll know this ahead of time. You'll also kind of know, like, has this person bought a home before? Is this a first time home buyer, pretty quickly too here? It's like, or if they bought a house like in the past where they're seasoned, they know what they're supposed to do. Or is this something where you're going to have to kind of hold their hand and, explain the whole process to them? So, you want to know things like that. So anyways, that's mortgage. Then we're going to get down to the final A in LP Mama, which is appointment. This is where you want to set the appointment. And, overall, that is your goal of each time when you're on a call with a prospective client or with a lead, is that you want to set an appointment with them. Now, an appointment could be another phone call. An appointment could be a buyer consultation on Zoom. It could be a buyer consultation in person. It could be going out and showing them actual property. But always you want to have a next step. And so this last part of LP Mama is appointment. This is where you're going to want to set the appointment. And so anyways, at this point now, you've probably had at least, you can't go through all these questions probably in less than 10 minutes. Maybe 5 to 6 minutes would be like the very shortest, but I don't think that you'd get there. Most of the time it's probably gonna take you 10, sometimes even 15, 20 minutes, just depending on how chatty the person is, and how open they are with you. Right. And so if you're 10 minutes into a conversation, at this point now, you can say stuff like, based on the information we've discussed today, I recommend we set up a time to meet, to go over the home buying process and set up a time to look at homes. Does that sound all right? Or you can just say something like, I always like to kind of do the either or close, where it's like I give them 2 options and both are options that I want them to take. So it's like, hey, are you guys available this Thursday or next Monday to sit down and just really, kind of go over the process and how it all works, and I can show you some stuff? That's like my easiest close, is literally just a, like, kind of even either or, and you just give them 2 options that you're both, so it's almost assumptive. You're assuming that they're going to, just say yes. And, you're still giving them options, and they've got to pick from one of those 2. Now, if they say, oh, neither of those times work, well, now they're still like saying, like, they still might want to meet with you, and you just got to find time, right? So that's the only thing there. But you're not really giving them an option like, well, so do you think that you'd want to meet, for coffee next week? Like, you don't want to say stuff like that, because then they can easily say no, or, well, let me think about it, that type of thing, right? So you want to just be confident, have 2 options, assume they're going to say yes, and go with whatever it is that you're proposing next for a meeting. So you just say, hey, we've had a great conversation. I'd love to show you some properties. We don't even have to meet in person yet, because I know you're busy. But if you want, we can just jump on a Zoom call, and I can share my screen, show you some properties that are coming up and are available, and I can get to know your search a little bit better. Are you available this afternoon at 6:00, or tomorrow after you get off of work at 6:00? All right. So stuff like that. That's how you're going to want to kind of close this phone call down. But if you've done all of that, the LP Mama, you end with the appointment and you hopefully get the appointment, then that's as good as you can do with a buyer lead that you've gotten online. And so anyways, I think that's a huge deal. Now, if for some reason you can't close on like an appointment in person or on Zoom, then of course, you still want to kind of have a secondary close in your pocket, which would just be like, hey, well then is it okay that, I follow up with you and call you next week or whatever, right? Like now at this point, if you can't get appointment, you're looking for permission, right? Like permission to keep going forward. And if they still don't want to give you permission, then at that point, it's like, okay, well, maybe this lead's not so great. You still can follow up as long as they tell you, like they haven't told you like, no, absolutely don't contact me anymore. You still can follow up and, try next week or a couple weeks later, but just realize that person may have their guard kind of up and you're gonna have to work a little bit harder on it. So, all right. So anyways, what are you guys thinking about as far as LP Mama? Have you guys, who's used LP Mama? Who likes it? I'm seeing here we've got some more people tuning in here. Awesome. We got well, I don't know how to pronounce your name. I don't want to butcher it. Sokeep Heng from Stockton, California. Welcome to the show. Terry from Houston. And John B in Sarasota. Nice. Well, let me know. I want to hear what you guys think about LP Mama. All right. Yvette Gardner, Paso Robles, California. All right. Jakari says, I've heard of it before. All right. Well, hopefully now you can use it. If you're generating buyer leads, telling you this is, how I've closed pretty much all of my buyer leads to date has started from this conversation. So the cool thing, like I said about it, is it's not necessarily like a script word for word. I would print these out, these questions, just as kind of like a little reminder of things. But you can see, you can really kind of personalize this and just make it sound natural, because you're basically just having a conversation that follows a certain order, right? So that's all it is. We've got here, this is great. I feel like I do a lot of this intuitively, but finding out if they have an agent or going for the appointment is where I drop the ball. Hey, just something you got to work on. There's definitely, I would highly recommend, getting a script partner, somebody who, you're comfortable with, and y'all can kind of go back and forth and just practice, especially if you know the parts that you're maybe lacking in a little bit. Specifically practice and focus on those until they sound more natural. Closing is kind of a more difficult thing. The nice thing about closing is hopefully throughout the whole conversation, when you're asking questions, you can kind of tie down the ends of those questions and almost like mini closings. So like, for instance, if they're kind of telling you about what type of properties they're looking for, or price ranges, and you ask the question, well, then at the end of that, before you transition to the next segment, you can be, okay, perfect. So you're looking for X, Y, and Z, is that right? Yes. So that's almost like a mini close in and of itself. So that way, when you get to the final closing where you're trying to close on like an appointment or something, it's not going to be as scary as like if it's like, oh my gosh, like I haven't asked them and tied them down on anything on this phone call yet. So hopefully that's going to help you there. All right. Jakari says, I forgot about it. All right. There you go. Yep. Carol, sounds unintimidating that you can personalize. Absolutely. Brand new to the RE world. This script is so empowering. Oh, I love to hear that. Good roadmap. We'll print it out. Perfect. Well, very good. All right. Well, let's jump over to the next one now. Which this one's going to be for sale by owners. Okay, so who do we have on the call that's ever called a for sale by owner? I want to see who has called a for sale by owner. Sometimes they can be intimidating. I admit it, right? Like, it is tough to call for sale by owner. Sometimes you think they're going to be like crotchety old people that are just like, I don't want to talk to an agent, right? But it doesn't have to be like that. In this script, I think that's the coolest thing about this script, is that I think you'll see from the way that you word it, that you aren't there to necessarily always try to sell them on something. The cool thing, because I've worked for sale by owners myself quite a bit, and one thing that I'll say is that if you truly come from value, that you want to help this for sale by owner, even if they choose not to work with you as their agent, you'll do very well with for sale by owners. So that might sound like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to put a lot of work in. that may not pan out, but that's just real estate, right? Like, I mean, we put a lot of work into any kind of lead source typically, and a lot of it doesn't pan out. But if you're just like, truly trying to help people, for sale by owners in particular, in this instance, um, you're going to do very well. A lot of them will end up choosing to use you kind of sneakily. They won't even know what you're trying to do. It's like kung fu kind of stuff. And so, but you just you have to have the right intentions. Okay. So here's kind of how it works. So let's say you found, for sale by owners to call, and I've got a whole thing that talks about Red X. That's what I've always used to pull my data for sale by owners and to make the phone calls to them. I've got the dialer, all that good stuff. But whatever it is that you choose to do as far as finding your for sale by owner data, and you're on your phone calls, this is how you're gonna start it. Hey, this is Kyle. I'm a realtor here in San Antonio. How are you? Right. And you'll know, I mean, obviously it's a game, it's a numbers game. Some of them, I mean, they're going to click right away. They're going to say, I don't want to talk to a realtor. And that's okay. That's part of the numbers game side of it. You're looking for the ones that will have a conversation with you, which is going to be fewer than the ones that won't, right? And so, like, you're going to have, many, you're going to have a lot of times where, for instance, if you make phone calls, they're not going to answer, first of all. So don't be so afraid every single time that you call that somebody's going to answer, because I would say it's less than half the time for sale by owner actually answers the phone, right? And then when they do, I would say it's about half the time that they're going to hang up on you, and about the other half that they'll maybe give you a little bit of an opening to talk, right? So, but okay, step number 2. Ask if they're interested in a buyer's agent. So this is how you kind of have to start it. It's not like you're not lying to the person, because trust me, you have buyers or clients that you're working with that at a certain price, they would buy the home, right? So, I mean, that's what you have to look at. Like, you're just trying to do some fact finding information. And even like myself, like, I got to the point where it's like, hey, I might potentially buy a house, right? And so just, you're not lying to them by saying, like, this next part of the script, which is, oh, that's awesome. I saw your house just went up for sale, and I know that you're selling it on your own, but I just wanted to know if you'd be open to working with a buyer's agent if they can bring you a fully qualified buyer, right? And so anyways, that's kind of where you go next. And most of the time, you're going to get the for sale by owner will say, yes, they are willing to pay a buyer's agent. They just don't want to pay the listing agent side of it, right? And so, most of the time, they'll pay sometimes 2%, 3%. They'll kind of tell you if they know, but a lot of times they'll just say, yeah, we are willing to pay a buyer's agent. And then you say, okay, great. Have you already moved, or are you still living in the home? Now, this is more where you're trying to build rapport. So, like, the first couple questions is just like you're trying to get your, opportunity to talk to them. Now, assuming they've opened up and they are talking to you, you would want to start asking some questions similar to LP Mama, where you are just trying to get them to open up and talk to you, build a little bit of a conversation. So that way we can, go for the next steps, which you'll see here in a little bit. So, okay, great. Have you already moved, or are you already still living in the home? So this is where you're finding out their motivation, right? Like, if they've already moved out of that home, their motivation is quite a bit higher than if they're still living in the home. And they're kind of like one of those sellers where they're like, well, if it sells, it's great. Not, we'll keep living here, right? So you're just trying to figure out a little bit of information there. Step number 4, ask about their future plans. Okay, got it. So where are you off to when the home sells? Again, you're just trying to find out, like, what their motivation is. Also just kind of knowing, like, a little bit more about them and their personality, right? Let's see, time frame also you're finding out from them. Let's see here. I just saw Tina's asking, how can we print this? So the best way to probably print this, Tina, is if you just go to my site, kylehandy.com. And if you want, the way that I usually search my site, I know it's kind of funny, but I just type in site, kylehandy.com, and then I space it, and then I'll put, like, for sale by owner script. There you go. Here's like the first one. It comes up on Google. You click it. And then here you can print the whole article, or of course you can just copy paste the script. I'll tell you, one of the things that actually brings up a good point, Tina. One of the things I probably could do is add just a little pop-up where I could put a PDF on here So you could just download it straight away, just the script. I don't have that up there right now though yet. So you'd have to, if you want it like today, you'll probably have to go in there and just kind of either print the whole thing out or copy paste and print it on your own. Okay, so number 5 is where you're going to kind of surprise them with reverse selling. So here's where, they're going to expect a sales pitch from you, or maybe, they've already gotten a sales pitch from another agent. And so you want to kind of like flip it on them, and almost go against the grain of what they're thinking you're going to do. So at this point, now you kind of know what their future plans are. If they're still living in the home, you say, very cool. And I'm sure with the market being so good right now, you'll probably have no issues with selling on your own. Now, if you say that to them, like they're gonna be like, what did you just say? Right. And, because most of the time an agent's probably going to try and convince them of why they should use the agent to sell their house. And you say, but if for some reason you're not able to sell, you're probably not going to be looking at other options for at least a few weeks, right? And so you kind of say, and they're going to say, oh yeah, yeah, well, we're going to try this, out for a little while, because that's what all for sale by owners are going to do. You're not going to convince a for sale by owner that just listed their house. These are new for sale by owners that you're calling. You're not going to convince them usually on like day 1 or 2. They've already decided. They've put it up on the web. That like, oh, all of a sudden you changed my mind. I'm going to list with you, right? So you kind of just want to agree with them and almost say what they're thinking to keep going down the path with them, so they stay open-minded with you. And so that's what you're going to start with. As far as the reverse selling goes, and they're going to say, like, yeah, we're going to probably try it for a couple months, see how it goes, see how the market is. Makes sense. Well, I'd maybe like to stop by one day this week to take a quick look, either before or after I head into work. And that's kind of tricky, even right there, right? You're almost just saying like, I'll stop by, if it's convenient for me while I'm in the area, if it's going to work on my schedule. So it's not like, hey, I'm trying to set this appointment with you so I can come sell you on using my services. You're just like, hey, I'm going to, come over there whenever I'm in the area. I'd like to take a look at your property. What usually works better for you, mornings or evenings, if I can come out and take a quick peek, right? So again, nothing intimidating about that. Most of the time, a for sale by owner will be open to you coming and checking out the property, especially if they, think that you might have some buyer down the road or right now that you're working with that could be interested in it. And what you're ultimately trying to do, again, is build rapport. And if you can get face to face with the person, that's going to, dramatically increase your chances of taking over that listing if and when they can't sell their property in a couple months, 2-3 months, whatever, which most for sale by owners aren't able to sell their property, right? So it's almost just a given that eventually they're going to be looking for an agent option. So if you can be the nicest, most helpful agent that they know, then there's a very good chance that they're going to want to work with you when that time comes. So your job is not to like pressure them or to like try and convince them to use you. It's more to build rapport, give value if you can. Like I know sometimes I would bring over like little packets, like CMA packets. I would bring over seller disclosures, just things that I thought would be helpful. I'd give them like little best practices on staging their property, just things that I was like, hey, you can have all this stuff. Hopefully you find it helpful, blah, 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 right? Like, and I would not have any strings attached, and I would bring them a packet and give it to them. They thought it would be very helpful. And that was it. And then like, even at that meeting, when I'm face to face with them, it still wasn't like an intimidating meeting. I was literally just, some call kind of thing coming through here. I mute this. All right. I don't know where that's coming from. Hold on, guys. Sorry, I got a phone call. I think it's like a Google. Someone's calling me on like Google Voice or something. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right. But yeah, no, I mean, even when you meet them in person, you aren't going to try and pressure them. You're just going to, like, again, give them something of value, go check out their property. Hey, can I snap a few pictures? Maybe share it with some people that I think might be interested in it, truly be interested in their property and try and, see if you could be, bring it to a buyer, right? Like, and, but just by doing that, you're going to stand out to them. All right. And then here you go. So now it's like, okay, would you be willing to do that? And now you go to the point where you're going to set a specific date. Okay, I'll tentatively put you down on my calendar for tomorrow at 4 p.m. If I need to change that, I'll give you a call. Is that fair? Right. And so you're just basically saying that to them. Yeah, that sounds great. Perfect. I'll send you a quick email with my resume and contact information. What's a good email address for you? So here you want to connect, you want to get their email address. And then also you're sending them your resume and contact information. So that's just like, it's again, you're not like, hey, I want, to list your house. You're just like, I'm going to send you my contact information so you have it. But I guarantee you, when you send them that, the next thing they're probably going to go do is search you online, look you up, look at your reviews, and just see who you are, right? Which is what you want them to do. And then now you have their email address. Don't start spamming them and sending them all sorts of stuff that talks about why they should use you as a realtor versus going for sale by owner, because then you just lost all that goodwill that you just built up with them. And so then close out the conversation and confirm the details. Perfect. I'll send you a quick email and I'll plan on seeing the home quickly tomorrow around 4 p.m. Thanks so much. Right? That's it. That's all it's got to be. Nothing, this isn't like intimidating. Yeah, it's still intimidating just to make the call. But as you can see, it doesn't have to be like this massive sales pitch that you're like, nervous about the whole time. So, all right. What's y'all's thoughts on the for sale by owner script there? I see here we've got a couple people here. Cynthia says she's worked with for sale by owners. Love it. Nathaniel's asking, does KV Core provide for sale by owner data? I don't think that it does, Nathaniel. I mean, they may have something in the marketplace where you can like add on data, but I don't think like natively it comes included with it. All right. There we go. All right. So let's go ahead and jump into our next script, which is expired listing script. Now, this one I haven't used for some time just because I haven't really, expireds, these last few years, of course, have gone down. There's not many listings that are expiring. It doesn't mean that it was zero, but it definitely was not as popular of a lead source as it was, years back. But the reason I want to go over it and why I have it as one of the 5 is because I do think that it is now going to start into next year where we're going to see that coming to be in place more, right? Like people are listing homes for too high of prices. They're sitting on the market. They're not selling. They're, expiring their listing agreement. And now it's fair game, right? For a new agent. And so one of the best expired listing scripts that I've found is Josh Gossard's expired listing script. And you'll see a trend. A lot of these are very low pressure. Like that's just kind of my style. Like I am not as much of like a salesy trying to, sell people on stuff. Not super smooth. It's just like asking questions, and seeing if there's an opportunity to, befriend somebody, to provide value to somebody, and go from there. And if they want to work with me, great. If not, if they're have their guard too high up, you just move on to the next person. So all right, so this is the script here. So we'll go over kind of the expired side of it. We're going to say, hey Sam, my name is Kyle Handy. I'm a realtor here in the area, and I'm reaching out today because I came across a property you recently had for sale. Since I specialize in homes that didn't sell the first time around, I wanted to see what your plans are moving forward. Do you still have plans on getting your home sold? Right. So here, the cool thing about that is you're saying that like you specialize in selling homes that didn't sell the first time around. Right. So that's pretty cool. I mean, if somebody hears that, they're definitely going to want to at least, perk their ears a little bit more of like, oh my gosh, like, I didn't sell my house the first time around, and now this person specializes in it. So, maybe I should listen to what they have to say. Again, not perfect. It's not, not everybody's going to, give you the time of day. Some people are going to click, but you're not looking for those. You're looking for the ones that are open-minded and that you catch their attention. Okay, awesome. Do you know what type of time frame you're looking at here? Right. And so this is assuming they still said, yeah, we might list it again, or, yeah, we're probably going to let it cool off for a little bit and then see how things go this summer or whatever. That's usually what somebody's going to say if they say something, to that question. Okay, awesome. Do you know what type of time frame you're looking at here? So if they didn't say like this summer, or if they didn't say like, yeah, we're going to list it in a couple months, that's where you're going to ask. Or if they did say like, a couple months, or this summer, that's where maybe you could get a little bit more, deeper. So like if they just said like, oh yeah, we're thinking about listing it later on, or, sometime later this year, you could just say like, oh, do you know specifically, like, thinking fall or winter or whatever, right? So get a little bit more details there. Okay, I see. So now here's again where you're going to start building trust. And these questions are from Mike Ferry. When you sell the home, what's the plan next? So you want to get them thinking again. You want to like, a lot of times at this point they're discouraged. Their home just didn't sell. Maybe they were fed up with their realtor. They don't like realtors right now. But if you can get them thinking again into like what originally sparked their interest to sell this home, and like, what the future benefit is to them, that's going to build trust for you, because now they're talking about that future vision with you. And then you can start asking them, so why do you think your home stopped? What do you think your home stopped your home from selling? And then this is where they're going to straight up tell you, well, the realtor wasn't very good. A lot of times, they may be like honest and say, well, I don't know, like the price, we probably just had it too high. Like sometimes they'll say that. Most of the time they're going to say, well, I don't know, the market wasn't good. We didn't get very many showings, things like that. And so you do want to try and get some details. Like if they say, oh, well, we didn't get any showings, you can say, oh, well, why do you think that is? Right. So again, going a little bit deeper than just scratching the surface. You could also ask them, what do you know about the homes that have recently sold in your neighborhood? Because that's also going to spark their interest. If they think like, oh my gosh, there's homes that have sold in my neighborhood, I didn't think anything was selling right now, because maybe that's what they were told, or maybe if they weren't just really paying attention. But be ready though at that point to also know some of the homes that have sold in their neighborhood. So that's another key point is I would have MLS pulled up. Red X gives you details about like their property, and so you can quickly search stuff while you're while you're on the phone. And so if you had to, you can pull that stuff up on the fly. It is a little bit like I try not to pull stuff up on the fly, as much as I can, because again, unless you're really good at this, it's going to just be extra work, and like you can have a potential to like not sound like you're fully involved on the call. But at the same time, if I felt comfortable with the call and I had MLS open, I knew I could pull some stuff up. It does go a long way if you can sound very knowledgeable about the specific details on their property or their neighborhood or whatever. So just understand that as you get better, you'll be able to kind of, work on those types of things. But in the beginning, don't worry about it too much. I mean, the biggest thing you can do is just build the rapport, be present in the conversation, and really just be trying to always, learn more about their situation, and add value how you can. So, okay, so I'll tell you what, I'd love to schedule a time for me to come over and see your house in person and maybe shed some light on why it didn't sell. I'd also like to talk to you a little more about what you're looking for in your next home. Are you available later this afternoon, say 3 p.m., or does tomorrow after work better for you around 6 p.m., right? So again, either or close, assumptive close, it's like two options. Both of them are good for you. Make them stop you, right? Like say, oh no, I don't want to meet or whatever. Because a lot of times people don't want to say no if you don't make it easy for them. So like if you're already like assuming that they're going to do it, people are pretty, they want to be easygoing. They want to be relaxed. And so that's kind of the way that you would handle it. Again, it's pretty quick. This is a very short script. It's not super long. With expireds, I mean, that's kind of the thing, is that one's a numbers game, of course, as well. You've got to call a lot of expireds to figure out the ones that are willing to let you come out there and do that. So you can't spend too much time, just talking, amongst each other. You want to kind of find out like, hey, are they going to be willing to hire another realtor? And if so, are they willing to let me come out to their property and kind of get to that point pretty quickly with expireds, because you're going to call through a bunch of them. Right. And so that's what you're going to do. And then if they allow you the appointment, then of course you're going to do more research. You want to go and search for the properties that have sold recently. You want to search the properties that are available, maybe even go tour the properties that are available before they, before you're meeting with them. So you can talk very educated about them. But yeah, so that's kind of how that works, and that expired side of it goes. All right. Now we're jumping into sphere of influence. All right. So now here's a good one. This is these are, I mean, this is the low hanging fruit for most agents. You either, if you've lived in your area for a while, if you just know if you're a good networker, you should definitely be working your sphere of influence, and you should be working it very hard, because that is going to be the quickest, most profitable lead source out there, by far. And so, getting good with talking to your sphere of influence, especially, I know the hard part with sphere of influence is if you haven't spoken to people in quite some time. Sometimes it can seem intimidating to call people out of the blue, because you're going to feel like, oh, well, they know my intentions. They think that I'm just a realtor. And now all of a sudden I'm calling them because I want their business. Right. And I know, I get it. Like that is difficult. But you got to start somewhere, right? Like if you're going to rebuild that relationship and try and make it not just about real estate, you got to start somehow, right? You got to start it somewhere. And so, calling them out of the blue, having a simple script that's kind of, easy, and will get the conversation going, I think is pretty important. And so, the one that I like, this is Brian Eisenhower. He's got a good script for it. I don't know if it was his or he took it from somewhere, but shame on me, right? Like that's the kind of the name of this script. You would just basically say something like, "Hey, Julie, I was thinking about you, and shame on me for not reaching out earlier. But I thought no better time than right now. I just want to check in with you and see how you're doing." Right. So, like, that's kind of you don't have to say it that way, word for word, if that doesn't sound like you. Like, I know for me, that doesn't sound exactly like me. So I'd probably change that up a little bit. But I would acknowledge that, hey, there's been some time since we last spoke. I'm sorry. Like, like I wish that, that I knew what was going on, better in your life, whatever, right? Like whatever you want to say to kind of kick things off new. That's what you want to do. The other way that you can do it, then this of course is going to take a little bit longer, because you can't just go through your phone deck or your phone book and just start calling each time. But if you also are on Facebook and you have them as friends, you can use that to kind of kick the conversation back off, because a lot of times, when people are posting stuff, they don't know who's seeing their stuff, liking it. But if, like, you go and, let's say I was going to have a call with Julie, and I was friends with Julie on my Facebook, and I just, before I called her, went on to her news feed and looked like, hey, what has Julie done recently? Right. So that way, when she picks up, it's, hey, Julie, I saw, you were doing X, Y, and Z, and then that kind of helps to transition into that conversation. But doing that with everybody in your phone book is probably one of the most dollar productive things that you can do. And so I know it's intimidating to do that. And a lot of times we overestimate, or we overthink that we are communicating with our database, our sphere of influence database. Well, we're like, oh yeah, like I'll talk to agents all the time. And I'm like, well, have you reached out to your sphere of influence? Oh yeah, I've reached out to them, and maybe they've called a few, they've probably texted a lot of them, or maybe sent emails, or maybe done something on their Facebook or their social media. But like actually calling through your entire, database of people, and just trying to somehow strike up conversation about their life, about what's going on, really rekindling the relationship is what you want to do. Here, you're not trying to sell them. You're not even trying to tell them that, like, hey, I'm in real estate right now. That might come up in the conversation. And at the end, if you haven't mentioned anything, of course, you can definitely mention if you had a good conversation. But you don't want that to be like the first reason you're calling. You really just want to call to try and break the ice, figure out like what's going on in their life. And that's it. Right. And so no strings attached. And so that's kind of the biggest thing, because real estate is a relationship game. The more active relationships you have at any given time, the better you're going to do as a real estate agent. So you're just truly trying to build a lot of relationships, and you're trying to maintain a lot of relationships. And so the best way you can do that, of course, face to face is great. I mean, if you can set up a coffee or a lunch, but in this case, you're trying to, get through a lot, especially if you're a new agent and you want to get through your database really quickly. You're going to, probably do phone calls is the most effective. Text, I mean, that's pretty impersonal at this point, especially if you're not like on a texting basis with them regularly already. If you just text them out of the blue, even if it is like, hey, how's it going? That's usually not the best course of action. If you have time to make the phone calls, which if you're a new agent, you're not doing a bunch of business, you should have the time. The only reason you shouldn't do something like this is if you don't have a sphere of influence. Maybe just move to a new area or whatever in real estate, and you're like, hey, I don't know people here. Well, then we're gonna have to figure out, you can use some of the other scripts, right? Buyer lead gen, for sale by owner, expired, if you do some open houses, whatever, right? But if you have a sphere of influence and you haven't kind of tried to do this with everybody in your database, there's a big opportunity there. So, all right. Let's see here. Let's move on. This is the last one, guys, here as far as our last script. And this is going to be like your circle prospecting, or like just sold / just listed script, right? So if you've ever heard of the term circle prospecting, what this is, or geographic farming potentially, is where you pick either a neighborhood, a zip code, a radius around a certain area or whatever, and you're going to call all of the homes, or as many of the homes in there that have public data as possible. And same thing here as like expireds and for sale by owners. You can get this information from a service like RedX, Vulcan 7, Coal Property, Coal Resources. So there's a few places that will sell you the data, the geographic farm data, but then obviously it's up to you to then make the calls. And so what the typical kind of process is for this, and again, it's pretty low, low risk. It doesn't have to be super high pressure here. Is what you're saying to them is essentially, hey there, we actually just recently sold a home in your neighborhood, and you can say we if it was within your brokerage. If it was like just a regular home that somebody else sold, I wouldn't, don't lie to them and say like we recently sold. Just say, hey, did you see, XYZ 123 Main Street, sold down the street from you, right? So like that's kind of how you would start it. So hi, this is Kyle with eXp Realty. I or my company recently sold a home in your area over on 123 Main Street. It had 4 bedrooms and 3 baths, and it sold for $300,000. Did you see that? Now, personally, I think the part where it gets into like it has 4 bedrooms and 3 baths and it sold for whatever is a little bit impersonal, and it's almost like too much information too quick, because they're just like picking up the phone and you're going like right into like this information. But you might just say like, hey John, or hey, is this so and so, right? Because usually this the data that you get from the circle prospecting will have their name and stuff. So you say, hey John, this is Kyle with eXp. I was just calling because we actually just sold a home down the street from you. Did you actually, did you see the home while it was listed, or just something like that, right? And like it's quick yes or no, and you just want to get some response from them. And then so when they say yes or no, then what I like to say, and I will use this part of the script, well, I know that when somebody sells a home, usually 2 more sell right away. So I was wondering, when do you plan on moving? Right? And they may say never, we don't plan to, or they might say, well, maybe in a few years, or they'll say something like, well, we were actually thinking about it, this year, right? And that's what you're going for. But either way, no matter what they say, even if they say never, you say terrific, right? Like you want to be upbeat and positive. And then you say, well, then tell me this, how long have you lived at this address? And so they might say 10 years, they might say 4 years, they might say whatever. You just say, great. Where did you move from, right? And they might, especially if it's like recent, like 3 years or something like that. Great. Where did you move from? And then they'll say, oh, we just moved from down the street. We're from this area or whatever. You're going to get a little bit of, this is again, building rapport now at this point. How did you happen to pick this area? So you're focusing on like their current home still, right? Like in motivation, you want to know about their situation. You just want to build rapport and get them talking. This isn't your chance to be like you trying to be the expert and tell them all the stuff that you know about their neighborhood. You want them doing the majority of the talking if possible. And that's with any of these scripts. You want the person on the other end of the phone doing the majority of the talking. Excellent. All right. So if you were to move, where would you go? Or would you go back? All right. So, cool. That's exciting. And when would that be? Right. So now you're finally going to get to time frame, trying to see like, all right, they might have said even, when do you plan on moving? They might have said, 5 years, but then when you actually say, when would that be? They might tell you something completely different. Well, actually we thought about it and, I mean, if we could get this, like we might move a little sooner. Like if we could do that, maybe we'd move in a year or 2 years, right? So at this point, you've built more rapport, so they might be more open to kind of really telling you a time frame. Um, all right. So now, in assuming they say 3 months or less, right? These are the motivated sellers, people that you really want to prioritize and work with. So you say here, so if they say 3 months or less, is we're going to continue with the script. Now you say, obviously, you realize that it could take 1 to 3 months in this market to get a home sold. Did you know that? Yeah. Personally, I wouldn't use the word obviously. I just think that's a little harsh. That's what he has in his script. But I just said like something like, oh, well, you probably have heard, homes are going pretty quick at this point, but it still can take about 1 to 3 months, even in this market, to do everything you need to close on a property. Even if they say 6 months, I mean, I'll even still sometimes say like 6 months, right? So my question is, do you have to be sold in 1 month, or do you want to start selling at this time, right? So now you're going to try and find out, like, do they want to be sold in 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, 1 month, or is that just when they're thinking they might want to list their property? Well, fortunately, to get you one step closer to wherever it is you said you want to be, all we need to do right now is simply set an appointment. So I can help you get what you want in the time that you want. I wouldn't say this, but won't that be great, right? Like something like just about that. So in the time that you want, does that sound okay with you, right? And then same thing, they've got a little and or close, which would be better for you, Monday or Tuesday at 4 p.m. So that's kind of how the just sold script works. This is one where I like this format, kind of the general idea of the call. You are coming in as kind of the expert because you're already saying like, hey, we just sold a house down the street. Even if it's just your company, that's fine. But then even if it's not, you just kind of have to say like, hey, a property sold. So you kind of take away the expertise a little bit because now they're not thinking that you sold that home. But if you haven't sold any homes in the neighborhood, you really don't have the choice. If you did just listed one, you could do a similar one where you say, hey, we just listed a property down the street from you. Did you see it go up for sale? Right. And it's kind of the same thing. You'll have to change around a couple of the deals. But for the most part, it'd be the same thing as if you just got a new listing. So you could, again, go on RedX. If you have a new listing, grab the geographic farm data for the properties around that listing, and then just start making calls, letting them know. And the other part, if you did just have a just listed, you can also use that to invite people to an open house if you're planning one. So anyway, so those are kind of the main scripts. We went through 5 of them. If you remember, LP Mama was the buyer's agent or buyer's lead script, right? Where you go through the different kind of format of going through a logical kind of progression, talking about their motivation and things like that as a buyer. You got for sale by owners, kind of the non-scary way of talking to for sale by owners. Expireds, your sphere of influence, and just listed, just sold, geographic farm kind of calls. So those are the 5 that, in my opinion, are the most effective. Even today, these are the ones that I've used personally. They've worked for me. I've sold lots of homes using these exact same processes and scripts. So I hope that it just gives you more ideas as to like, hey, if I'm going to make some phone calls, what method should I use? Because it doesn't have to be as intimidating as what most people think cold calling has to be, right? So you can do it in a way that works for you. The important thing, though, of course, is make it your own, add value, practice, right, with a script partner, role-playing partner. Because even if you're not trying to sell stuff to people, it can still be a little intimidating. Just like, oh, I'm going to fumble over my words, or I'm going to say something stupid. But if you've practiced it even a few times, it's definitely going to make a difference. And then when you start doing this, on a regular basis, it's going to be like it's nothing, right? And then you're going to be able to get more listings, get more deals, and things are going to feel a lot better. And you won't have to worry about where your next closing is coming from. So yeah, it might be scary to kind of get started with this, but it's a lot scarier to not have any money coming in as being a real estate agent and knowing when your next deal is coming. So, all right, cool. So let's see here. I'll run through these questions real quick. Do you think it will be okay to use the just sold script after I host an open house in the neighborhood. 100% Jakari. Yeah. I mean, switch it up. You might have to switch up a couple things, but something like, hey, I just did an open house in your neighborhood. I was checking to see, have you seen that property listed? Right. Or something like that, just to kind of break the ice. That's all you're really looking for there. And then the rest of this just sold script is still very, relevant. So, I mean, the rest of it, questions 1 through 10 is totally fine. The only thing that you're doing, whether it's an open house, just sold, just listed, is that's kind of like your icebreaker. So you just might, switch around the front part of it a little bit, but the format is still going to be the same for that. So, yep, good question. All right. Let's see. Nathaniel says, how do you make sure the contacts you find via RedX are not in the national and state level do not call list? They've actually got a filter on RedX that will filter out your do not calls. So you'll be, safe. And that's one of the reasons why I like using RedX, is that they will scrub for the do not call list. Do you have any suggestions to cleaning up a large list of iPhone contacts, i.e. scrubbing a large list of phone numbers or iPhone contacts, especially if you're not even sure who a huge chunk are? Yeah, I mean, definitely, I think that it's going to take time, because I was in that boat at one point in time where I just had to like scrub through stuff. I mean, I don't know if there's like a suggestion as far as like a tool or a process. I mean, for me, it was just a manual process of having to go through. One of the things I will suggest you don't do is don't upload like, your contact list into like an Excel file and then put it in your CRM right away. Like, manually go through your phone contact list. And when there's something that deserves to be added to your CRM, or your call list, or whatever you're going to use that, that data for, then put it in there once you've gone through it, right? But it's kind of just a manual process. And if you don't know who some of these people are, there are tools, that you can use. And if anybody, can comment or let us know, put it in the comments, if you're using something like this. I just can't remember the name of them, where you can like, reverse search on their phone to see like who it belongs to. You could use something like that if you're like really kind of like wanting to go through this stuff. But realistically, if you have that much, data, this many contacts, I would say just try and go through it and pull out the ones, even if it's 50 people or 100 people, out of 2,000 that you might have. But if it's 50 people that and you can talk to, and you do talk to them, that's going to be more powerful than just having this big list that's sitting there doing nothing for you. So, so don't overanalyze, don't think about it too hard, but like just go through the list and pull, a set of names out there that are important to you. Because that's usually what the limiting factor is. And it's better to call those 50 people than to not do anything, because it's overwhelming that you've got, 2,000, in the list that you're not doing anything with. So that would just be my suggestion, feedback there is, yeah, go through it. There's no quick way, but just manually go through, pull out the good ones, and, don't delete the old stuff necessarily. Or maybe you can, if you want it out of your phone, you could export it, put it in a list that maybe down the road you can go through, and when you got even more time or something, you could, kind of scrub through it a little bit better. But, but I think really just manually doing it is probably the best way for most people. And yeah, and that way you can kind of get the ball rolling. So, all right, guys. Well, hey, thank you all so much for tuning in. If you guys are in Las Vegas at EXPCon, definitely hit me up while I'm there. I will be speaking actually on Thursday, so I'm excited about that. So hopefully we'll see some of you guys there. But otherwise, I will be back here next Tuesday, same time, same place. And quick little shout out, we've got a new course that will be coming out for new agents or agents about to get into the business. So if you're not even licensed yet, we're having a course. A partner of mine, Blake Sammons, who you've seen on the show a couple times, has helped me build it, because he is a more newer agent, right? He's actually, I think, 2.5 years in now, and he's crushing it. So I was like, dude, I need to get somebody in this course that is fresh, like, as being a new agent, because there's a lot of things that I've forgotten or that I might have, skipped over. And he has been a super huge help building this course. I think it's going to be amazing for agents once it's released, which is going to be on November 1st. If I'm actually literally in the process of building the landing page for it right now. But as soon as I have that up and ready, you definitely will get notified of it. We're going to have a pre-launch sale where it'll be cheaper to buy it before it launches than once it goes live on November 1st. So be on the lookout for a discount code that you'll be able to use to get that course cheaper. So I think it's going to be $297 for the course. It'll be like $149 at launch, right? And there's a lot of information going into it. So we've got downloadables for everything, like different resources, PDFs that you can take with it, checklists, scripts, all the stuff that we've been talking about. Plus, then we've got 10 different videos ranging from anywhere from like 40 minutes to a little bit over an hour on each lesson. So lots of good in-depth data on it. So I'm excited to launch that. Keep an eye out for it. And if that's something you're interested in, like I say, I'll send you, if you're already on my email list for kylehandy.com, you will get notified. If you're not, head over to kylehandy.com right now and jump on my email list. Any of the pop-ups that pop up, if you put your email in there, you will then be on my email list. So, all right, guys, well, have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.